What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And G Face's attorney now says that basically that whole motion that got passed around the internet because it was submitted on G Face's behalf, Yuri's behalf, was filled with errors, right? Defendant's notice of errata, meaning I fucked up. And I have that document right. I'm gonna show it to you guys. It's only a couple pages, but just to kind of back up for a second, right? So I was in the middle of recording a video because, and I had talked about this Saturday during my live, but it was like 4 hours, so I don't expect anybody to watch that, right? Um, you guys know I did the video in 2022 about G Face telling, right? And even his attorney now is saying, "Hey, Yuri never told, never cooperated," and that's still not fucking true. Like it'll never be not true that G Face was a rat ever, right? It's done. It's history, and so I'm gonna show you guys that. But I was getting ready to do a video saying I think G Face is lying to his attorney, and that all that talk of the Mexican mafia was really meant for what he meant was Armenians, right? Because his issues seem to center around Armenians, period, right? And then again, I've gone over that in the past. I went over that on Saturday, but I was gonna button it up in a nice little clean video today. And also I was looking to see did he get bail, right? Because when 1090 Jake dropped his video on Friday, um, the hearing hadn't happened yet. The documents, that the judge was looking at in the hearing had came out, but the hearing was scheduled for 2 o'clock, and it was unclear if if it was granted or not, right? Now we know that it was not granted. There's actually a medical form too, right? This came out first, where G Face is saying that he's hurt and he hasn't gotten treatment, and so he wants the judge to let's slow this down a little bit. There we go. So he wants or the judge ordered that doctors, be able to take a look at him and submit a report back to her by 522. But anyways, let's get to this. Let's get to this form. Okay. This is going to be floating around as well online. So I'm just going to read it real quick because it's not very long. Undersigned counsel respectfully requests that the prior motion for bond relief be corrected due to two errors. Right. The motion for bond relief is what everybody has seen. Counsel would ask that the two errors be corrected for the record and for further proceedings. On May 13th, 2024, counsel filed a motion for bond review for defendant Yuri, aka G-Face. The bond motion went into great detail about the defendant's background and his criminal history. There's one way to put it. Unfortunately, due to the need to have the hearing as soon as possible, and because the defendant was in custody, they had very little chance for contact or communication. What little communication they had was difficult to understand. I can imagine that G-Face is paranoid, freaking out. Like, he reacted dramatically when I did the video in 2022, right? It didn't get a whole lot of traction because um, really other podcasters were scared to pick up on it, right? If we're just going to keep it a buck, particularly Southern California ones. We're kind of scared to speak on it. So it didn't get a whole lot of traction, but you could see in how he responded to me that he was frantic. He disappeared off the internet for almost a year. Then he came back, right? Still repping the big double S, doing all that stuff. But then we all seen his reaction when G-Face pressed him. I mean, when Whack 100 pressed G-Face about the same paperwork that I showed, years prior or year prior, and how he was wiggling and squirming. So you can imagine how he was feeling talking to his attorney. And there was a lot of confusion, and that was his attorney's rationale for the request for reconsideration of bond. His attorney's argument at that time was, hey, there was a lot of confusion when this dude was first arraigned on this. He had a public defender, the private attorney didn't show up, so you never got the full story, Judge. Here's the full story. Okay. So I get that, but what little communication I had was difficult to understand. Thus, counsel had to rely on third parties and what few public documents that were available at the time. If he would have watched the video from 2022, he wouldn't have sounded so stupid. Because of that, counsel misunderstood two events and actually combined them together incorrectly. The groups responsible were also identified incorrectly. Well, that's an understatement. The summary of the appeal of the trial referenced in the motion demonstrated to counsel that he had written the events wrong. When he received the appeal summary, which is what we've all seen, counsel wanted to correct the record because in the future, if the defendant is sentenced, counsel does not want the information in the PSR to be incorrect. I'm sure that's true just as an ethical attorney, but also, even though I've never done Fed time, my understanding of how it works, talking to Tim Snow and Chad Marks and others, your PSR is kind of what in California system we look at as your 128G, but even more because it talks about your sentencing factors, your case, everything else. So if his PSR said that he's fucking been a DEA informant and wanted by the MA and everything else, he's gonna have a hard time. I suggest he's still gonna have a hard time because he's still a rat, and that's not ever gonna change. But we'll see. Anyways, counsel stated in the motion he was stabbed because he was a DEA informant and that he was a victim of the Mexican mafia. That was incorrect. It should have read that a rumor was started against Yuri that he was a police informant and that he was helping to put away drug dealers. The rumor may have actually been started with the police as they were trying to get Yuri's cooperation in the attempt on his life. So that's also just not true. Okay. Well, there were people who testified back in 2009 that they had seen paperwork with Yuri's name on it and Yuri had been telling, right? And we know that Yuri told in the Snoopy case, but I'll get to that stuff in a second. We got the receipts. That's what I do, right? Yuri has always maintained and adamantly maintains today that he was never an informant, but once labeled as that, he was in danger for his life and has been forced to try to protect himself. In fact, the opposite has always been true. He refused to inform, even after he was later attacked and could have cooperated in order to prevent having to do prison time. Instead, as counsel wrote in the motion, he refused to cooperate and ended up serving 9 years in prison. He was repeatedly hassled by police to give them names, but he refused. In short, he could have been an informant and served a lot less time or perhaps no time, but he refused to cooperate. Now, to be fair, law enforcement will at times say, hey, you might as well cooperate because whether you do or not, we're going to go tell your homeboys that you are. Or if you don't cooperate, we're going to go tell your homeboys that you did. Then you're going to get, got at either way. So you might as well just give us what we're looking for and we can help you. That is a common tactic, right? And some people fall for it, But in this case, they may have said that to Yuri. But in this case, it's not just the cops saying he was a rat. And again, he testified. But stay tuned, we'll follow up. Secondly, it was stated he was stabbed by 2 Mexican mafia members. That was not the case. Yeah, no shit. And I was going to point out, I said it on Saturday, but in the video I was going to do today, there's some podcasts and stuff saying that happened in prison. There was no way that happened in prison because even the attorney said Glendale police were pressuring him to give up the names, and Glendale police have no jurisdiction in prison, right? So, counsel has now reviewed the case. Unfortunately, he did not receive it until after the hearing, and it was not a stabbing but a shooting. The later case was an attempted stabbing, which is where the confusion came in. The shooting was not Mexican mafia, but 2 young men who were Armenian and who were eventually put on trial for attempted murder. Exhibit 1, summary of the appeal. That summary of the appeal is the same paperwork I showed in 2022, the same paperwork that WAC 100 looked up on his phone and anybody else could. I posted the links to it back then, right? And confronted G-Face with. The same paperwork that G-Face tried to crop and show on screen and claimed that I was doctoring shit, and other podcasters from Southern California went for it and supported the narrative of maybe this dude's making it up. Like I have a reason to do that. But anyways, I have all the stuff right here. We'll look at it in a second. The Mexican mafia was not involved at all, and counsel can now see that from the summary of the appeal. The problem arose when counsel was attempting to talk with Yuri and counsel was confused over who was pursuing him. Counsel thought he was referring to the Mexican mafia when in fact he was referring to a different group that has been looking to attack him. It was never the Mexican mafia involved, but a different group of people who were pursuing him. It was that group who attacked him in 2012 and who were the people he stabbed. They were Armenian, not Mexican mafia, which the police records reflect. I think that's the incident he talked about on No Jumper, or some version of it, where he was like, basically, I stabbed Armenians as get back because they stabbed Ghost and all this other fabricated bullshit. In addition, Yuri, even though he was shot, refused to testify or identify the shooter. In fact, he was so adamant that he would not testify that the Glendale Police Department actually violated his probation and kept him in jail for 11 months from June 7th, 2007 until May 6th, 2008 to try and pressure him into cooperating. They also told him they would tell people he was cooperating even if he was not. Eventually, that is what happened, and he's had to protect himself ever since. Again, Yuri is lying to his attorney, right? And it sucks because as an attorney, you kind of can only go on what your client's telling you, right? But I'm gonna show you where Yuri lied in court when he was testifying in the case that he says he didn't testify in, right? Like, I don't know that he knows what the truth is. And that's gonna make things very difficult for him in this case, right? Because he will say and do anything. Anyway, let's go. Counsel apologizes for the confusion. As the court is aware, it's very difficult for counsel to see an inmate who's at a distant location where there's no attorney rooms. It is very hard to have any kind of conversation where the parties can hear and understand each other, especially with other people talking on phones nearby. These corrections are important to set the record straight, you think, and are backed up by the attached exhibits that counsel now has. And that's the thing, but if counsel looked at this case, he would see where Yuri testified. At some point, if the defendant pleads, there will be a PSR provided to the court for sentencing, and the information needs to be accurate to make sure the court understands the correct history, right? So that's what came out today. G-Face's attorney says, hey, I was confused when Yuri was talking to me, and I said all this stuff that he didn't say. I think what happened is G-Face said that stuff because he thought that's what would help him. The attorney probably colored in some of the details a little bit, just kind of based on what they think. But then Yuri by now has found out that that information's all over online and everybody's talking about it. And now he's getting at his attorney like, no, you messed it up. That's not what I said. That's what I think really happened. But while we're looking at paperwork, let's look at a couple other things, okay? And we'll get into this stuff. So this is the reality of Yuri's criminal history, okay? Pull this over a little bit. I believe this is the most accurate statement. It comes from the federal government. I'm not saying that the feds don't lie, but on something as basic as what have you been convicted of before, I feel like they're more trustworthy than Yuri, obviously, who will fuck say anything. And so here it is, right? He entered the U.S. in 94, was order removed in 2005, okay? And this is paperwork that I think some folks put this stuff out too, right? I showed it on Saturday also. But this was just the thing saying that Yuri should be detained, okay? When he was first busted on this case. It says he has the following criminal history. And these are going to be based on dates of conviction, not dates of arrest, right? Second-degree robbery, unknown severity in 2003. 2 felony counts of assault with a deadly weapon, not a firearm, great bodily injury likely, 1 felony count of battery, 1 misdemeanor count of bribing a public official, all in 2011. That's going to be the case that his attorney's talking about when he says that some people came to attack him and he defended himself, but then refused to cooperate and went to jail, right? And did some prison time. And then 1 felony count of assault with a deadly weapon with force and possible great bodily injury in 2020. That's the one where his attorney had said in the motion to reconsider bail was actually just a fist fight between him and a childhood friend that got a little carried away, right? So he caught cases during 3 different years. Unlike No Jumper, where he's like, in 99, I was into Hatchaby. I was a J-Cat, that's it, right? So that's his history, right? According to the federal government. Those are the things that he has. And that second-degree robbery is the one where he used a knife and robbed the ice cream man, got like $40. And his attorney said that he was sentenced to 4 years with 2 strikes, which is really odd. And I talked about on Saturday why, right? Like in California, when you get 1 strike, you do 85% of your time. So for example, I was found guilty of attempted murder. I was sentenced to 10 years. I got 1 strike. I had to do a minimum of 8.5 years on that. Of course, I did more. And that was it. Had that been my second strike, I would have been sentenced to 10 years, but then second strike it, so it doubles to 20 years, and I would have to do 80% of that. So 4 years with 2 strikes means that he really got 2 years, and then it was just doubled. And it just seems odd, right? He had already been in custody longer than that at the time he was sentenced. But nonetheless, That's what his attorney said. Okay. So that's his history. Now, what did OG Face say in the Snoopy case? So to kind of rewind, this is the paperwork I showed back in 2022. This is the links. This is what's been floating around about him, since that time. I'm not gonna go through everything again, uh, but I just want to point out what Yuri said, and then I'm gonna show you guys what Snoop said during this trial, also, right? Because I think that's interesting. So Yuri testified he went to Brand Park on June 26, 2007, to see Ermine, right? It's a female, I think. And basically what happens here is he goes to the park. He's talking to some girls. Supposedly Snoopy and Skinny pull up. There's some disagreement about whether Yuri was strapped and went to see who was in the car, and then Snoopy busted at him, or if Yuri wasn't strapped and went to the car and Snoopy busted at him and Yuri ran away. Different witnesses say different things. That was the argument Snoopy tried to make when he testified and said it was self-defense, as he said Yuri had a gun. Other witnesses also said Yuri had a gun. Some said he didn't. Who knows? Who really cares? But this is testifying in the trial. Yuri says he was high out of my mind on marijuana that day, did not know who he was or what was going on, right? Couldn't see inside a car, just saw two bald heads. Words were exchanged, right? And this is the paperwork I used to show, the tattoos, that it really is the same Yuri. But then look at this part highlighted. This part right here. Let's see if I can highlight it. There you go. Yuri admitted that at the preliminary hearing, he identified Armenian, which is Snoopy, as the driver and the person who shot at him. And he told the police that Skinny was the other person in the car. Now, I don't know how you interpret this any other way than he told on those two individuals. When he went to trial, and I said all this shit years ago, when he went to trial, he tried to backtrack, right? Actually, I don't know, man. I was so high, I don't know. But that's at the trial. The preliminary hearing is where the DA makes the argument, we have enough evidence to prosecute this case. So when a victim shows up at a prelim and says, yes, he did it, and points, right? That's all it takes. Now you're going to go to trial, right? Now you got a case. Now you're going to sit in jail or whatever. So the fact that he showed up at trial and tried to backtrack doesn't eliminate or erase that he told initially, right? Well, here's another weird thing. As he's testifying in the case, right? And he's talking about he left the park because, he didn't want to get his probation violated and all this other stuff. Yuri admitted he had been convicted of assault with a firearm and 3 counts of armed robbery in April 2002. So the 2002 versus 2003 thing is not really a big deal, right? But he was not ever convicted of assault with a firearm or 3 counts of armed robbery, right? That was the stick up with the knife where he got the $40. And it was with a knife, not a firearm, right? So he's lying in back then when he was in court, right? And like I said, I think this dude just has a really toxic relationship with the truth, right? Or maybe he's confused on the difference between a knife and a gun. I don't know, because he told his attorney all kinds of stuff having to do with knives, and that's not the case. Yuri was in the habit of carrying firearms at the time of the shooting at Brand Park. He said that, right? He said that. Oh, you're not very smart, Holmes, for a bunch of different reasons. It's crazy because his attorney now should have corrected the record on more errors, because in his statement, right, initially, this is the one that already kind of made the rounds on the internet, right? He talks all about how Yuri doesn't mess with guns. Yuri doesn't have any history with guns and all this other stuff, right? This is all about why he filed the motion. But then if you scroll down, defendant's targets in Mexican mafia since 2006, stabbed, repeatedly left for dead. He's currently in protective custody. I wonder if that's true or not. I think it's true. About 99% is true. Uh, and then if you scroll through the again, this is the paperwork that was already put out there, right? Talks about making his money and his hustle. He's not really looking at a whole bunch of time, which I think is true, right? Um, he's been tried with 3 crimes prior to this. This includes a charge in 2012. Um, and then it says, he has a love for country. Give me 1 second, sorry. Right. In 2000, defendant was arrested for second-degree robbery. The circumstances of the robbery did not involve a gun. Okay. But he said he was convicted of assault with a firearm and 3 counts of armed robbery. And then it says, that's where it says he was sentenced to 4 years in prison, given 2 strikes. DA got involved in 2005, which now, like I said, the attorney says is not true. But in this document, he says how he doesn't mess with guns, right? Yuri doesn't mess with guns, and so there's no risk to that. This is the part with Bozo. I will say what I've heard a couple other people say and what I said on Saturday. I still don't think Bozo faces any exposure in terms of criminal liability. I would say that even if the record wasn't corrected by the attorney, right? I think this correction helps to make sure that he's not punished, but nothing in this suggests that Bozo actually threatened him. He just sent some pictures. If it was actually the Bozo that we're all thinking of, right, and if those messages really exist, which who knows, right? Maybe that record needs to be corrected too. But either way, it wasn't a direct threat. It's not like G-Face is the witness to a crime that Bozo's charged with, and he's trying to intimidate him or anything else. So I think that's just G-Face being desperate. But if it was all mistaken, okay, because here's the other thing. I think G-Face still lying. If it was all mistaken and he never meant to be talking about the Mexican Mafia and the attorney was confused, then how did the attorney even know this? And why is this relevant? If all G-Face's issues are with, the Armenians, which I think is accurate, and not with the Eme historically, then why does the Bozo message mean anything? See, so I think G-Face is just trying to cover his ass. I think that's what's going on. And so what else was I gonna show you guys? Oh, this. So this is actually a video that G-Face uploaded, right? Like I said, he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. This is a video that he uploaded back in a response to me getting on his helmet about being a rat. And this is Snoopy testifying, right? The guy who wound up getting convicted for shooting at Yuri. This is Snoopy testifying in his own defense in that case. And listen to I'll read it to you, what he says about G-Face. Now, this paperwork is paperwork G-Face posted. It does look like trial transcripts. I don't have any reason to believe that it's not accurate, but this is not something I can independently verify because I can't get access to it. But again, G-Face posted it in 2022, somehow thinking that this was helpful. But look, so this is Snoopy talking, right? He says, I'm 24 years old. On June 26, 2007, he lived in Pasadena on Del Rey. I'm gonna have to pause this because sometimes he scrolls real fast, right? Like that. So yeah, when did you first meet Yuri? Sometime in 2006, and then basically he says we were friends for about 7-8 months, right? So they met in 2006. They were friends for 7 or 8 months. They started beefing because Yuri thought that it was over a female, right? The mother of his first child. Yuri thought that Snoopy was trying to holler at the mother of his first kid. Her name was Holly, and so they started arguing. And then, so we'll look at what's next, right? Got away from the scroll. Give me just a second. So what was the dispute concerning Holly? Right, he thought I was having an affair with her. Snoopy said at the time he was not, having the affair or anything else. And wasn't even friendly with her, hardly even knew her, right? But then here we get to some of the interesting stuff. What did he say to you concerning? Oh, not concerning your affair. Thought you were my boy. What happened? Anything happened after that? After the argument? It was verbal over the phone, and then he stopped coming around, stopped calling me, because of this, and because of stuff concerning Holly. Yes, we were good friends prior to that. We would hang out all the time. And then he made a diss song. So G-Face been in the habit since back, almost 20 years ago now, of running to the internet and talking shit about people, right? So he made a MySpace page about me, saying that he was gonna kill me, that he hates me. Who'd you hear that from? From numerous people. And then you told the jury he made songs about you. Yes, he did. Tell us about that. What did you hear? He made songs making fun of me, saying that whenever he sees me, he's got something for me. It's on site, and then he goes on to explain what on site means. I'm gonna try to speed this up, so I don't want to get into it. And then he says, right, that's gangster language. How often did you hear these threats? They were all over MySpace. He made like 2 or 3 songs about me. Then there was a page on MySpace that had my picture on it, and it said 187 Snoopy, which is the penal code for murder. But we're gonna get to some cop stuff, right? So I want to direct your attention to May 21st, 2007, about a month before the incident that you're talking about today, right? What he was charged with. That's when he says that, G-Face, shot at him, right? He was standing outside of his house and was shot at. But then, sorry, there's no place to get this paperwork but in these video clips, right? So, and then it says, you know anything about him and violence? Yes, I did. What'd you hear? What do you know? I knew personally because he was my friend. Tell the jury what you knew. He's a violent person. He has a gun with him at all times. Every time that he had a gun on him, every time I was with him, he had a gun on him. Did he ever brag about shooting people? Yes, he did. He's done time for shooting people. So he was lying to his homeboys, right? Because at this point, he had not done time for shooting people. He's never done time for shooting people. Okay, did you know, this is what I was trying to get to. Did you know anything about his relationship with the police prior to May 21st, 2000? Was that 2007? Did he tell you anything about that? Any relationship he had with the Glendale Police Department? He didn't tell me, but I knew. Not everybody, but a lot of people knew. And how did you learn that? Let's see here. I'll wait for him to scroll a little bit. And again, this is his dumbass that posted this. Otherwise, would have never been able to see it. Because this guy, Garen, it's written Karen, but it's a dude. It's Armenian, right? He got locked up for a lot of guns. That's how you spell it. He got arrested for guns, and I was told that Yuri set him up with those guns. That he informed the cops that they hid the guns in his trunk or whatever. We had them, and that's how he got. Let's scroll up a little bit. And that's how he got busted. And actually, I saw paperwork on that. That's why I knew that. He's an informant. Now, this isn't proof. This is one guy who is testifying in his own defense because he's facing an attempted murder charge because Yuri told on him. So now he's in essence kind of telling on you, not kind of, he's telling on Yuri, like, hey, here's all the reasons why you should understand that I was just trying to defend myself. So is Snoopy telling the truth? I have no idea. Did he really see the paperwork? I don't know. But did the police just invent this narrative that Yuri was a rat because he wasn't telling on Snoopy for shooting at him? No, he did tell on Snoopy for shooting at him. And then when Snoopy goes to trial, he's like, bro, we've been heard that this dude's a rat. And if you look through the appellate paperwork for Snoopy's case, right, which I showed you earlier, and you can follow the links in the description, you will see that multiple people who spoke to police on that case of Snoopy shooting at Yuri said they had heard that Yuri was an informant. So this narrative about him telling had existed prior to this incident. It wasn't born out of this incident. And the fact is, he told in this incident, which didn't really do him any favors in trying to prove he ain't a rat when he ratted in this case, right? So let's bring it all back. And then the bozo thing, you can count that as telling. Like I said on Saturday, and many people have said before, right? Um, when you when you tell something to your attorney, right? Whatever your attorney says or does, you are responsible for, right? You're held accountable for that. So when he tells his attorney, Bozo sent me these text messages and he was threatening me, and that's proof that my life is currently in danger. The streets, at least in California, at least in Raza communities in California, that's going to be viewed as telling. That's going to be viewed as snitching, right? Because the only way your attorney knows that is because you told him. He didn't go through the phone, right? So Yuri is still telling. He is still trying to do anything he can. But again, he's been lying in court. He's been lying on camera. He's lied to his attorney. He's been saying whatever he thinks is going to get him where he wants to be. And now he's sitting in federal custody, probably not looking at a boatload of time. He's going to lose that house, right? Asset forfeiture. That house was, according to the government, was bought through fraudulent means. So he's going to lose the house. He might lose that 3.5 million that he appears to have made legally with his whole hustle of give me 5 rats and I'll, introduce you to trucking. He might lose that too. Because I think the government is going to argue that the view of him being successful, look at all the money I got and the money counter and all this other stuff, that was made possible by money that he stole from the government. And that image is what motivated people to be willing to put $5,000 in his pocket so that they could then live a life like him, because that's what he was selling. But that life that he was claiming really stems from fraud. So I don't know that argument will work or not, but the government loves to take people's shit. So anyways, G-Face attorney is trying to clean it up, but that is not just some big misunderstanding. I think there's some level of misunderstanding, but also G-Face lied to him, and now he's feeling the footsteps and feeling the fear, knowing that this sits all over the internet. The government sealed the motion to begin with, but then his attorney filed this, and didn't file it under seal, right? And so it is what it is. We'll see where this goes. I don't think he's getting out of custody anytime soon, though. And yeah, stay tuned, man. Help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time, because you're worth it. Help your community because they need you. Links to the paperwork that's available online will be in the description. If you want the current paperwork from his cases, you're going to have to shoot me an email, joshua@thehomiehangout.com, or follow me on Instagram and shoot me a message. And I don't have a problem emailing it to you. I usually put that stuff on my Patreon, but I don't mind, in this situation. I'll send it out to you. It is what it is. You guys stay tuned, man. Take care, and don't fall for the fucking okie doke. The safest way to stay out of trouble is to not go get in trouble, man. Take care.